In today's episode, we have a very special guest, someone who I worked very closely with in my time when I was working out in Nigeria. We have Titi Ojo, who's joining us today. Titi is a powerhouse of an individual. She single-handedly helped to set up a rather important platform in Nigeria and really took things forward a long way. Favor, what do you think? What are you looking forward to about this episode?
Yeah, I think coming from a country where our flagship product is oil, it's really nice. It was really amazing. Of course, I wasn't part of the original recording of that episode, but to listen back and just hear Titi's insights is amazing because when we think exports, I'm sure a lot of people do not think along the line that we covered in this episode. And that's why this episode is really, really impactful and it's very, very important as well for our listeners that we discover and we get to learn something new about a country like Nigeria, and not just the fact that it's new, but the potential for the impact that it has.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I first was posted to Nigeria in 2006, they asked each of us that were going to various countries around the world to bring in an object to signify the country we were going to. And I remember I brought in a can of WD-40, which is an oil-based lubricant, which is very popular in the UK. But because oil was what most people associated with Nigeria, but of course, as the great author Chiamanda reminds us, is that countries do not fit one narrative, and there are multiple narratives in each country. And what I really like about this episode is it allows us to go under the surface and really see bits of Nigeria's economy, bits of Nigeria's exports that are often neglected, often glossed over because of people's desire to have one single narrative. Yasmin, you were part of the interview with me. What's your big thoughts on this episode?
This was a very interesting episode, and I was very excited to talk to Titi because I really looked up to her and having to enter that kind of male dominated industry and having to make an impact. I think she did mention a little bit of challenges that she went through and having to wear her big boy pants. Because sometimes when you want to make change and impact, you have to toughen up a bit. So I think that was a very, very interesting episode. I really enjoyed it and I really enjoyed talking to her.
Well, let's see what Titi has to say. Hello, Titi. Thank you for joining us. Would you mind introducing yourself for our listeners?
All right, good morning, Richard, and I'm happy to be here. My
Good
name is Titi, and
morning.
good morning, Yasmin,
We're
yes,
happy
because I
to
have
have you
to
here.
host this morning. Right, my name is, yes, excellent. So my name is Titi Ojo, and I first I met Richard on the Policy Development Facility program funded by the UKFCDO. In 2016, I was the lead for the trade policy work stream between 2016 and 2021 thereabout. And since then, I've been championing advocacy when it comes to non-oil exports in Nigeria. I've worked very much within the export community as an export coach. Of course, my background has been business development for a while now, and coming into the export space for me is like building capacity of SMEs to actually take their products from Nigeria abroad. It helps in improving quality. It just changes the game. It's a game changer for them. So I'm a national business development service provider. I am a project management specialist. I do a bit of consulting, of course, and that's in the development space. Currently also working on the standards partnership program as a national coordinator, also funded by UK FCDO. But my interest has always been in business, supporting MSMEs. And of course, top of my mind will be supporting MSMEs to become exporters of products and services. And that's me in a nutshell.
Thanks, Titi. So let's go back to when we first met back in 2016. You were given a mandate back then to work with non-oil exporters. Can you tell us a little bit about, you know, what you did? What did you do to back them so that their voice could be reflected in Nigeria's policy arena?
Right. Thank you, Richard. Before then, there had been an observation, and there was a study actually. So the whole idea of the PDF program was based on evidence. It was an evidence based kind of program. And the evidence showed that non-oil exporters were missing from conversations that concern them, especially when it comes to policy reforms. Imagine the government comes up with policies and the actors in that same ecosystem are not even having their voices represented when these decisions are made. So that was a major gap in the policy system at the time, especially that voices were underrepresented, non-oil export oriented businesses in particular were underrepresented on that table. A major mandate for me was to bring them to the table, basically, and ensure that their voices are heard in these conversations. Beyond that, my mandate also then was capacity building. And I could see where it connects. I can see where the handshake is. Because when you get more people participating in non oil export, they begin to also see where the challenges are. And then advocacy becomes more intense. That's what it is. They participate, it helps them to see the gaps and where the issues are, and they're able to participate based on the evidence, based on their own experiences as well, participating in that space. And that way they can also bring evidence to the table. So it makes their voices even more believable because they're in that space and they're practicing. So capacity building was major, policy advocacy was a major one. And of course, you talk about the demand and supply side of policy. Also, at that time, the supply side of policy was quite active, and that was government and instruments of government. The demand side, which are the people, were less active. So we're there to balance it up. The demand side needs to step up, while the supply side also begins to see the demand side as, yes, this is important for us to begin to relate with these people. If policies were meant to be done properly and aright, so that policy also fulfills its mission. The mission of having policies really is to ensure that you empower the people, especially actors in this kind of space. And so we went full gear with this. Of course, from that 2016, 2017 to 2020, which was the first phase. And I'm sure I'm going to answer more questions as we move on, but then let me not talk too much at this point so that we don't lose track at some point. Yes. But that was the mandate. Capacity building, bringing underrepresented voices to the table. That was that was topmost on the agenda.
That's such an interesting insight from you. And it's so nice to, because when Richard told me we are going to be co hosting you, I was very excited to hear that a woman was in a mainly male dominated space coming in and making so much changes. So thank you so much for that. Um, so yeah, I would like to ask if, as a woman, what challenges did you face navigating Nigeria's largely male-dominated import-export section?
Interesting. That question. I well, I've had to answer these questions
Yeah.
like, oh, as a woman, how do you navigate? But interestingly, I don't see it as
Mm,
challenges. Being I don't see gender as a challenge. Really,
mm.
that's just my personal opinion. I don't see gender as a challenge. I believe that it depends on the quality you bring to the table. If you bring something that is really worthwhile, like mind blowing, the other gender will shift so that you can have your space. And I believe that when you do really well, when you work hard at what you do, and you present yourself as, I'm capable of doing this and I'm delivering results, nobody will look at your gender. They'll look beyond your gender completely. Completely. And that's what I've enjoyed in the course of my work. Interestingly, let me just share one very funny story. I was just in 400 level at the time, and I was doing my internship at an internet service provider, and I could drive at the time, so that was fine. And they asked me, "Oh, we had to go to clients' premises." I said, "Okay, give me the car, I'll drive myself." They first looked at me because I had a small stature, one happy-go-lucky girl like that. I'm like, "Don't worry, I have my driver's license." And off I go. Anytime I just go to the client's place. And then one day I was at the fuel station and I saw some guys in a car and they were looking at me. I don't know why they were looking at me that way. And I made up my mind, oh, maybe they're looking, who is this small girl behind the wheels? We had a race that day on the expressway. I raced them till they had to turn off. They're like, what? Who is this daredevil human woman? So I just wanted to let you know that from a very young age, I've always proven to you that, man, I can beat you to it. Eventually, I met one of the ladies in the car. She met me somewhere and said, I think I've seen you before. And then when we connected, Said, my God, you are that lady in the other car. I'm going to tell these guys I have met you. I have met that daredevil lady. I have met her. So just to buttress the fact that for me, it's about what you bring to the table. Honestly, it's never really about the gender. We just have to give our best to everything we do. And at the end of the day, people that see gender will begin to see beyond it because they see you're a woman and you're doing so well. They'll give you the accolades. Yeah.
Thank you, Titi. Just to build on that a little bit, because I've worked with you, Titi. I know you're a force of nature, and that
Mm,
nothing when you're pursuing something, nothing will stand in your way. And that was exactly what we needed to get this off the ground and to get this to where it is today. Um, but presumably there must be some specific challenges that women face as exporters in
yeah.
Nigeria. And how
Mm,
did you part of what you were doing was bringing these voices and these perspectives to policy
right.
circles. How did you which kind of issues did you see there, and how did you try and bring those issues forward to government and other policymakers?
Okay, so women in export, it's of course, and I think in Nigeria today we have women in export, women in business, women. There are reasons why that is, though. I know that we have a male, maybe the patriarchal kind of system we run, even as a people, gives women, they're usually at the background. But interestingly as well, women are nurturers and women could build businesses easily. So you see women also wanting to participate in trade. A major problem I would say had been financing was a big issue for the women, though, financing. And based on our programs, we try to link them up with financing institutions, even though the financial institutions too, they come with a whole lot of interest rates. And our women are saying, you know what, we're not even in for this. Also, I know that, well, women, maybe because the way we've generally been raised, women don't want to really speak out, especially when they see a lot of men in their midst. But we've tried to say, you know what, you have to speak. I remember I had a town hall recently and someone had spoken about one of the women that had a problem getting her goods across. And I said, bring her into the meeting. Let her come and talk about it. But she didn't show up. She didn't show up because she felt, what if I say this? And but man, the guys in the room spoke. That's what I noticed. So one of the things we try to do is, and I've done this specifically because I work with some of them one on one because they're within my community. If I see that you have a special challenge, I encourage you come and speak about it because that's evidence in itself. We can't be outside and be speaking about changes, and we are the ones going through the hassles, and we are also not bold enough to come forward and say this is what it is. So as much as possible, my team and I back then tried to do this, and even now on the project, on the tangent I've pursued after the project, I still ensure that women have a voice. Also for the women part of, we have other programs, of course, like the she trades and other interventions from the UK government. Anyway, I've done quite a bit around that area too, moderating conversations that involve women so that we can bring out valuable lessons that they can take away. It's something I pursue with all my heart. I've done some work with NEPC, and I remember one of the She Trades events. I moderated a particular panel which is around mentorship under the EEFP. After this project, the Export Expansion Facility, I also did training for 200 women, 200 plus across 4 states in Nigeria. And the whole idea was to bring them out of their shells, is to look at their challenges. And after that, I did a 6 month mentoring program. 6 months. The 6 months were not funny, but it was good. One of the things we tried to achieve during that 6 months was market access. And after that program, I got testimonials. Someone said, Titi, thank you. You taught us about goal setting. I set a goal that after this 6 months, I must have exported. And I have. And I've made some money from the US market. I felt very proud of that. And someone came in and said, oh, now I understand this better. Documentation. I went through a process and I saw how it worked. And now I've been prepping my products right now to enter some new markets. So I know women need that focus really because we also build to nurture and we're people that, women are business people, right? We are business inclined. And so all the gaps that we've seen, whether financial, whether knowledge based, whether being able to face policymakers and say these are the issues we're facing, these are some of the things I've pursued since then, and the results are there. I could point to a couple of women that have been able to scale through the heights that this has presented.
So tell us about the community of practice and how that evolved over time.
Ah, one of the proudest things we've done. I remember, I remember that. My mandate when I got on the PDF project was to have a community of practice. And this is really interesting to me. In 2017 or 2018, I don't know whether you know Wenger, trainer, what's his name? He's the father of communities of practice. Why do I forget his first name? But he has Wenger trainer. That name has Wenger. Wenger trainer. Trayner.
Okay.
We brought this man to Nigeria to start off first to educate us. And at that time, we had built a community more or less from our town halls, our dialogues that we've had, which were periodic, right from 2017. So we brought in. So we just went online and I saw the father of communities of practice, and I said, well, I will bring this man to Nigeria. He's going to be in this particular uh, conversation, this workshop. He's going to set the ball rolling for us. And I contacted someone in World Bank, a friend of mine, and said, oh, the same guy had done something for us in the World Bank, and he linked us. She linked us together. Have you found the name? Probably. And
Etienne Wenger.
Etienne. Oh Lord, Etienne. He even sounds like a Nigerian name, right? So Etienne came in, and he worked with my team and said, okay, this is how this evolves. We designed a program, and we had it over 2 days, and that was how the community of practice was born. Now, interestingly, when the project started, a lot of exporters, because they had not had a platform like this, really bought into the project because this was really cool. We were able to speak to government. We had them in the same room with us. We were able to speak with policy. Oh no, they loved the whole idea. That's the truth. So we were able to hold that critical mass from day one when we even started our workshops and dialogues. And when we transited into community of practice, they were all there. We also picked leaders within the community, leaders that every other member saw as, oh, they were big people they could trust within the community, and these were people that really had a heart to bring change to this country and to the ecosystem of non-oil export. So that's how we started, and we continued steadily with so much commitment. Many times we could have meetings within the community. We were generally just feeding the community as we went on with either, "Oh, what are we doing today?" or "This is an event coming up." So, and when you build communities, you need to engage them basically. So we kept on engaging the community, and the community kept growing. In fact, some would say, Titi, I want to add someone. I said, yeah, go on, let's add them. So the community just kept growing until the community evolved into what we have today as the network of practicing non exporters of Nigeria. The community is still there because we have the community on WhatsApp. And right now we've hit about 300 plus in the community. And when we started then, I think we started with about 80 or 90 people, and we've grown to about 300. So the community is still there. But from the community came the network, which is now a registered non-profit organization, which is now the network of practicing non-oil exporters of Nigeria. So, and that was really cool. The essence of having a vehicle to continue to run PDF then, though, was to have at least a registered vehicle recognized by the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And everyone in the community also supported that objective of setting up something that could run by itself, that had a life, that is registered in Nigeria. So it was all that whole idea was even supported by the community. So you see how communities could evolve as well. And a community ended up setting up a network, which is a non-profit and also registered by law under the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And the community itself still continues to run. And every day we still have new members joining. It's just amazing. We still communicate. Every day I check what's going on there. Every day I'm checking who's posting today. It's been beautiful, I must say.
Wow. Before I come back to Yasmin for the next question, I just wanted to say, with donor programs, when something like this is started, usually when the donor program comes to an end, people stop thinking about it and they stop looking at
Mm,
it, and sometimes obviously the funds are removed, the people who are paid to, but it sounds like this set up as a not-for-profit, there's been some momentum in there that's kept
yeah.
going. What do you think was crucial about that momentum to keep going?
Well, one thing has been engagement. If you keep engaging a community, you see them build momentum, and then getting them to see what we all will benefit if we work together. I think that's very crucial. For the community itself, till today, you have people connecting. So someone could post on the community and say, I have an order for sesame, for example, for 100 tons of sesame. Is there anyone in here that has this particular variety? So you see, the community keeps supporting each other. And then somebody in the community says, yes, let's have a private chat. The community is also supporting themselves. People are saying, I have this. Is there anyone in this room that can service this request? They keep connecting. We have those that just putting what is new in the economy today, what is new in the trade ecosystem globally. So every day there's something they're learning. So they don't even want to leave. That's the truth. If they even change their numbers, they call me and say, I have a new number. Please let me add the new number. They don't want to leave because every day there's something happening, whether it's information that is being passed or market being opened or created or programs that we advertise and they come into those programs and they are so enriched. So they just want to remain in the community where they keep getting all those things. And of course, MPNN, we keep posting things in the community, of course, and they just want to be part of MPNN all the way. For us, emerging and becoming a non-profit also is an advantage because based on that, we're a recognized entity, right? In the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So we can put our name anywhere. We can write a proposal. We could invite anyone to come and speak at our event and they'll be asking, who are these people? They check your background. Okay, are they registered? Some people are like that. They just want to show there is a registered organization. Oh yes, we are. And we continue to still tap into the community of practice to get experts to say come to speak at our events, get the practitioners to do stuff with the implement. So it has also been a very good, a mutual relationship. But truly, as long as the community keeps getting fed with what they will benefit from every now and then, members will remain. They won't want to go anywhere.
Okay, thank you so much, Titi. So the next question would be, how has the Nigerian policy landscape changed for non-oil exporters?
Oh, thank you for that. I'm seeing changes, although not as much as I would like it. But let me give Empton as a good example because for us, we're saying we have to change the policy landscape when it comes to trade conversations. And one of the things that I would say we've done very well, because every time I've had to present Empton anywhere, I always tell them that when it comes to advocacy, Empton has stood on that lane since 2021 after this PDF. And we've come to be known for that, kind of. And that's why more people come to our town hall say, man, these guys are the ones driving this whole thing. I remember last year, there was a policy, not a policy, it was an export regulation that NAFDAC came up with. And the moment we got wind of it, we had a town hall to discuss it. We brought NAFDAC itself to the room to say, come and present this thing to us. Even though NAFDAC said they put it on their website for 6 months and expecting exporters to have looked at it and give your comments. But imagine 6 months there, and most people did not even know it was there in the first place. So, well, the moment I realized that, I said, okay, this will be the conversation in our town hall meeting. We brought the major actors, the Cocoa Processors Association president. We brought all the people that should be seated in this room to talk about that regulation and why it is hampering non-oil exports and not facilitating it. And we're able to even give feedback to NAFDAC on it. Say, see, these are the issues. This is what's going to happen if you do this. If you do this, this is how you have strangulated non-oil exporters. If you think you are making, if you think this is so cool, it's not cool for us. Just hear it and know this and no peace, And we're able to bring out the evidences, and which is what the town hall is for, really. Evidence-based engagements. The practitioners came into the room and said, "This is how it's going to affect us." Those that were even service providers in that space came to the room and said, "This is how it's going to affect us." We brought in NEPC. NEPC also said, they narrated their own side of it. This is what we see happening if we go ahead with this. So how do we go forward with this? There were a whole lot of suggestions, and I'm glad that NAFDAC took that feedback. Interestingly, the lady that came to speak said, "Oh, I don't know about MPLAN. Oh, this is my first time of knowing about MPLAN. We would like to meet with you. We have a meeting with our DG. We'd like you to participate. We want you to now. We want to engage with you more." And for us, I was like, oh, this is what we're also talking about. And actually, we've had meetings with NAFDAC after that. So that stemmed that regulation. And already the bill was almost being passed. But somehow, with exporter voices coming to the table, we had to say, we're all done with this. hear from us first. The more we do this, the more our government or policymakers begin to see why it's really important to have the actors on the table. Because if we don't consult and you just go ahead, you would make some decisions that instead of facilitating trade, you're actually hampering it. So for me, I think the more we do this, the better it gets. I'm still saying that policies just start running without the actors involved. Yes, it's still happening till today, but we will stay on our lane of engaging. Whenever we see that policies are moving without us, we draw them back and say, you know what, come to this table and let's have a conversation. And somehow, a day at a time, we'll begin to see the changes. But gradually, yes, gradually it's changing. It's just gradual, it's slow, but I expect that we could pick up momentum on this.
Thank you, Tissy. Um, just to move on now to the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. Now that that's operational, how prepared do you see Nigeria's non-oil export base to compete regionally?
Wow, good question that is. So naturally, the big exporters will always have the upper hand in this, and they've always had the upper hand anyway. Because if you look at the top 100 exporters in Nigeria, you would also see that a lot of them are multinationals because they have the weight to pull when they come here. So that's one part. And yeah, they're big. They could afford so many things. They could afford quality certifications without even batting an eyelid. They get support from their foreign partners, from their countries to put into, they come into Nigeria and they have the money, they have the weight to pull around. So they won't have so much problem, right? But for the MSMEs is where the issue lies. In terms of quantity, because when you're talking about export, you're also talking about volumes. You're talking about volumes. You're talking about quality assurance, which is where the cost really is. So when you talk about quality assurance, you're talking about certification. A lot of our MSMEs still struggle with obtaining certification, and certification sometimes will just expire in no time. One year you are renewing a certification that costed you so much to even have in the first place. If you ask me though, we have a lot of good products on our shelves. Really, I've seen mind blowing products that are deemed for global markets, AFCFTA inclusive. But I think we need to do some more work internally. First, education, education around the FCFTA, market linkages. I've not seen a lot of that done, and that has been some of the challenges. Although recently there was flights to Uganda, we need to do more of that because our exporters need hand holding through some processes. Truly, especially connecting them to markets will be one thing that we can help with. So that market, yes, AFCFTA, but where are the markets will be my question. So let's see where are the markets, and then we can work back from there. Because yes, we have products, but some of our exporters need scaling up so that they can meet the demands of that market. They need certification, especially when some destination countries or when some new certifications or quality regulatory concerns come up within the African continent. We will need our SMEs to be supported through that, at least at the early stages, so that we can even have our own footprint in the AFCFTA. So far, it's been slow as well. I can tell you that. There's been a lot of talk about AFCFTA, but when we begin to look at how many have really participated in it, we're still far from it. That's the truth. But we can gradually get there with some support here and there. But I feel certification in terms of volumes of export, financing will still be topmost on the agenda.
Thank you so much, Titi. That was very insightful. So, personally, what do you think are the risks if government continues to default to oil and large corporate voices rather than SMEs as you suggested?
So let's start by saying that SMEs are the engine of for economic growth anywhere in the world, and we cannot ignore them. No, it's recently I was just thinking through like, okay, I have a small business, for example. If my small business thrives, I can employ three, four people. Right now, I have a few staff that I pay every month. At least there are three people permanently on my payroll right now. Actually, I was just thinking about it. And I just used myself as an example that if we had small businesses thriving, we'll create more jobs. We'll create more jobs. Now, if our exporters and exporting, if we do it really well, can create massive jobs. It can drive production locally. So imagine The certification ecosystem itself is huge. Imagine if you have many people playing in that space. Those are jobs. In fact, I think when I was coaching for the UK Future Females program, there was a lady that said the person wanted to buy from her wanted powdered fish. And somebody even said somebody wanted golden fish, golden roasted fish. I don't understand how that can work. And I was like, wow, this is where research comes in. If this sector thrives, we will have new entrants of actors. The scientists will come in, the ones that will do lab tests, the ones that would help us to bring new products into the ecosystem. Those that would food scientists will have work to do if it thrives, honestly, if we thrive in an ecosystem of export, our small businesses, if they begin to, if they're supported to thrive, more jobs will come. More jobs will come, definitely. Because you now get bigger to a stage where you need more hands. Then you get more hands to work with you. So I believe that if we keep looking at the big guys, and truly, yes, the big guys are important, but can we also draw a link somewhere? Can we link them? Because the big guys can be the drivers, but they're also working with the SMEs. I think we should have that bridge somewhere. Can SMEs feed into the bigger companies? How can we have that handshake as well? Because if government continues to look at the big companies and then non-oil and oil export, neglecting the MSMEs, we have neglected a major constituency. And that constituency, they are the ones that make the economy move. And when it comes to oil, we've talked about this several times. Thank God that we at least we have a refinery, a local refinery. But you also understand that Nigeria's largest export is oil, and oil prices are determined by the international market. So unfortunately, if the barrel of oil goes up, well, we know how we respond to it. If it comes down, we know how we respond to it. It's too volatile, truly, to base your economy on that. It's the non-oil exporters that can do so much. And we're also talking about economic woes in Nigeria. If we can look inwards and develop our economy, our local products, new products coming in, exportable products, we're going to make so much more. I believe that we have ignored that for too long. And I'm hoping that even the government of the day makes it an agenda that we drive. Because when we have an agenda for non-oil exports to thrive in Nigeria, we can have there'll be some concerted effort. So all the things I've spoken about as challenges and gaps will be sorted out, and then we begin to see MSMEs thrive in that system. And if we see MSMEs thrive, even our local industries will rise again. Our local industries that seem to be dead for a while would be raised again, and they can also create employment, jobs, economy of families improve. There's so much to talk about here. Honestly, it's only how many percentage of Nigerians even deal with oil? Truly, maybe 5% or less. The rest are the small businesses. So why don't you put some focus on them and enable them and empower them to be able to produce and also produce at the level that we can begin to export and earn foreign exchange for the Nigerian government or Nigerian economy. We'll be so better off when we do this. That's my take on it.
Thank you, Titi. And, it's so inspiring to hear about the journey from the network of exporters through to the not non-government organization that was established and is still active and going well today. But from your own perspective, what are the exporter stories that you're most proud of from that whole experience? What are the ones which really stand out for you of like, yeah, that made a difference or that was really meaningful for
Oh,
that exporter?
okay. So when we were done and we tried getting testimonials, I think that was where my joy was because we also had a full mentorship program anyway. We had about two or three guys that had been trying to get into the export market. They were to do something around cashew. I think one was a cashew processor. And because the mentors of the program were also practitioners, they were able to work with them. And I think one of them was able to do as much as a 40-foot container at the time. So I loved that testimonial really. One of the things I also got to understand here was women being able to, we talked about women being able to get their products from just anyhow to becoming export ready. That when you see the product, you're like, wow, you are ready to go now. So they had a packaging mentor that walked them through the whole gamut of packaging, and they were able to invest at least their little money and little sums to get their packaging right. And packaging is a major thing when it comes to this market. So a lot of products got their packaging right. And in fact, when I saw some of them, I was like, wow, this is where we want it to be really at the end of the day. On the government side, I was quite impressed with some government institutions. So let me even talk about PEBEC at the time when we were on the project. We saw that we could we could support the business environment, ease of doing business. So what did we do? We commissioned studies and we called it exporter experience. So when the PEBEC came out with, okay, we've done these reforms, we've in the business environment, we went to town to do a study, and that study fed into their work to say, okay, we say that instead of 16 steps to export, we reduced it to 8. But we went to the market and we realized that it's not 8 actually, it's now 12. Because some rent seekers have found their way in again. So the input into that program for us was one of our very proudest moments that we were able to support that process. Then some government institutions, I could make good example like the Agricultural Quarantine Service. For those of them that got feedback, and this was direct feedback from exporters themselves about their services and how they would have preferred to be served by these institutions, some of them took it very seriously. So the DG of NAQS was one of our meetings, and he mentioned it that, well, glad, and he comes by himself. He comes, he doesn't even send anyone. For most of our dialogues, he came by himself, interestingly, and was able to take in some of those things we had mentioned, and that way he was able to change some things in the system as well, even reforming their own system to ensure that they provided excellent service to the community they were set up to serve, and that's the exporting community. So these were very good feedback that made us really proud of what we've been able to achieve. One day at a time, yes, we got there. One day at a time. We had someone that got his global gap at the time, and he was also a mentor. And he also mentioned how he was able to get around some bottlenecks, courtesy of having to meet some of these policymakers in the room with him. So the access that we also created then gave quite a number of exporters breakthrough, truly. What they would have gone to queue up and be going up and down to a government office, they were able to have that conversation within a room with the same people. That got a lot of things out of the way. So I would till tomorrow say that the structure of that project was just excellent. Honestly, it got the conversations going. And when you look at government as if they're the big elephant in the room, they saw that, well, they were not so big elephants after all. We're sitting in the same room with those people, and this was the time to open up and tell them how we feel, and that got very good attention too. Yeah, so those are just a few things I can remember on top of my head.
I'm sure it was a very proud moment for you to watch these businesses learn and
Ah, sure,
grow.
sure.
So I think the last question it will be to round up everything. How can our listeners or policymakers support the flywheel of non-oil export growth in Nigeria? You did mention passage because you said something about direct flight to Uganda, and I think that's
Mm,
the problem here. Someone might have a product, but the person looking for it is
mhm,
so far away and isn't even aware of
mhm,
such product existing. You give example of the goldfish. So apart from maybe passage and access, what can
mhm.
policymakers support the flywheel, or what can our listeners, maybe them personally, do to support this momentum going?
So the value chain of export is still there's still many opportunities in the value chain of export. Okay, and it's time we begin to look at where we can solve problems. So, because we're talking about listeners could be private sector people right now, listeners could be government, could be policymakers all listening to us. So let me start with the private sector, guys. I think we need more participation in private sector in the export space by providing services, added services. So I'm currently on a standards partnership project, also funded by UKFCDO, and the Nigerian quality policy has been passed. And there's a whole lot of participation that the private sector can. There's a lot for private sector there, even as simple as setting up laboratories that can test products. Imagine you want to export to some country and they say you have to do a test of that product and you have to send it to Germany first. So what happens to all the labs in Nigeria, for crying out loud? So private sector participation in the area of creating value-added services, and value-added services could be in processing, could be in even transportation, Could be in warehousing, which are some of the challenges that we have. Some might have the products already, you're sourced. Warehousing becomes a big issue. Also bringing in private sector, lending their voices to make sure that our exporters can also get the kind of incentives that they need to continue to produce. It's very important for us. For the policymaker that is listening to this, it's high time we make our policies really inclusive, very inclusive. Anything that would involve exporters' voices, make sure they're the ones on the table. Nobody else. Bring them in. Get them from different associations. Let them sit down. Get them from different thematic areas, or the cashew person is here. The association of cocoa is here. Let us all have a say in how policies are reformed in this country. It's too important. It's terrible when you hear a policy has been passed and you were just not involved in the process. It's a terrible place to be, truly. So, for the policymaker, let's ingrain this in our culture. That if any policy needs to be passed, we need to engage the actors and the voices. It's important we do that. For any other person, even the private sector too, the when it comes to production, because of the small scale of how our MSME exporters produce, we need to also set up hubs. This is very key. Hubs where, if that hub is certified, you know that anytime you come into that hub, anything you do also takes quality away from there and can have the quality seal. I think if that works, it drops pricing. Honestly, if everybody must have ISO, everybody must have ISO. Imagine if that system is certified ISO, and anybody that produces from there gets the ISO seal. That's cheaper because everybody shares that cost. So we need to have hubs as well. Private sector can play there. Governments can fund it or sponsor it, but I think it's a private sector thing. But when it comes to policy and creating an enabling environment, this is where government must step in. And lastly, I feel that increasing our non-oil exports to the world, the government must make it an agenda. It has to be an agenda. If something is not an agenda, it probably won't even get the attention it deserves. And when we say it's an agenda, we're saying we set goals as a country to say within the next 5 years we want to make this happen, and it will come from these sectors. And these are the things we're going to do to make sure we empower the actors in these sectors and across states. So every state is acting towards it to that common goal. And of course, monitoring and evaluation becomes also key here, because you're also monitoring to see what progress we have made over time. So please, government should make this an agenda. If indeed we know that non-oil export plays a major role, and indeed it does, even globally, when we export, we make money for our economy. Let's make it an agenda. Let it be a statement from the government, and let there be something in place to ensure that yes, we're supporting actively actors in this sector, so that indeed non-oil export in Nigeria will increase to the world. NEPC's slogan now is double your export. That's the slogan right now. And even the past regime said export for survival. So their slogans actually show the importance of increasing our export. So let's have an agenda. Let private sector come in, provide value-added services, be part of the ecosystem. Play your part. We're going to get better at it. And policymakers, please engage us when it comes to enabling policies. Be our greatest cheerleader. We want that to happen. That's what I'll say for now.
Thank you, Titi. Let me just ask one final thing. When we got PDF to start working on this area, the aspiration was we were trying to be realistic, that we knew we could not solve all the problems for non-oil exporters in the country, that we knew that that these things were going to take a long time to move. But we did want, by the end of the program at least, for the starting point for all of this to have moved on. And so do you think that the PDF was successful in this? Do you think that the starting point for where this for non-oil exporters has now gone in a positive step forward, even if it's not got to where it ultimately needs to be?
I think it was successful. The fact is, even after PDF closed, a lot of our beneficiaries were asking us questions. How could that project end? Like, they could not even believe it. And someone was like, "You mean you won't be anymore in your office in my time?" I said, "Really? Like, what happens to all these things you've done?" They were confused. Like, what's going on? How can this project end? And it was a no, 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 no. It shouldn't have ended. That was the cry of the people that worked with us. How could this project end? And the only thing I could tell them was, well, we have a network of practicing non-oil exporters that is going to carry this forward. So it's not totally gone. I love the fact that from the beginning of PDF, and I remember in the terms of reference that I collected, I received, that it was written clearly there that we have to get a vehicle that will continue the work after the project was over. That was so good. As in, projects must have sustainability plan. And PDF had put that right into that plan from the beginning. So even when we had all the things going on, eyes on the ball, there must be a vehicle that will continue this work. So for me, that was even the greatest success of all. We didn't just end it and off it went. There was a vehicle, and we prepared that vehicle over 3 years before we finally got to the bus stop. So when PDF was ending, we were launching Empnen. I think that was the biggest success, really, to me. Sustainability, it's so key to any project whatsoever. And PDF succeeded with that.
Thank you, Titi. Thank you so much for your time today and for telling
Thank you.
the story of the great work that you've been doing over pretty much the last decade from when the
Yes. Yes,
project,
it's
but
almost
longer, I
wow,
know,
that's true.
because you, yeah. So well done, and thank you for sharing that experience with us.
And I'll say thank you. You were such a, would I call you the overseer? Anytime you came in to have a meeting with the group, oh, it was such a refreshing time. Honestly, all the time. You believed in us. You were such an encourager. And that really, that was remarkable. So, well, thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Titi.
I could,
Okay. Well, that was great hearing from Titi Ojo, and that is an initiative that's very close to my heart. It's something which I was very keen to get off the ground. Let's go to Favor first for your reflections on that interview.
Yeah, I think just like I was saying at the beginning, this is very, very an important episode for me. And listening to it was very, very interesting. My first takeaway would be when Titi talked about the demand supply aspect of policy. I personally, I'm somebody that I love policies because I feel from my legal background that law more than anything is a tool for social engineering, and policy is an aspect of it as well. And so she talked about the fact that policies exist to positively impact the lives of people, but it only works if the people themselves are aware that there's the tool at their disposal. So that's when she now spoke to the point of empowering the demand side, because the supply side exists in terms of the infrastructure, the government institutions, they already exist. But how can we now empower people to know that, okay, policies are there for you, but if you don't even know that you have the power to influence policies, you have the power to demand, how exactly is this policy going to affect you positively? And that was what she was talking with this non-oil exporters organization, that they work towards saying, okay, how can we influence policy? We are here, give us a seat at the table. It's not just the big boys, not just the oil barons, we are here as well. And I think I enjoyed learning about the concept of community of practice. I think explicitly, this is the first time that I'm hearing of that term. And it brought to mind when we discussed Sial Court. So the Sial Court itself is a community, but it talked about the fact, it brings to mind the fact that how shared that's camaraderie between community members can really bring about innovation and change. And I think it's something that we have spoken to time and time again on the Flywheel Economics podcast, that economies are very much ecosystem based. And this is another thing that this podcast showed us, that the fact that it's not just one individual that works on it. As a community, they have to work together. And because they she talked about the group chats that they have, and people can come ask questions and they can begin to learn from each other. And that really speaks to, when we say economies as ecosystem, it really speaks to that ecosystem part for us at Flyway Economics, that it's not just one person, it's not just a couple of businesses here and there, it's how they come together that they are now able to positively influence whole systems. They're able to change things for themselves. And when I mean change things, it's just when Titi made reference to the policy that was going to be pushed out by NAFDAC. And NAFDAC was just moving on their own, not knowing that there was going to be an entire community of non-oil exporters that would be negatively affected. But when they were able to sit down with them, when they were able to talk and say, okay, oh, what you're about to do is going to negatively affect us as a community, it began to change things. And that brought to mind the importance of evidence in policy making. And it's something we've talked about. We talked about it during our trade episode with Dr. Manzo, that when it comes to trade policy, and I dare say any policy at all, that it can't just be heart based, it has to be head based, it has to be based on evidence. And so they were able to present this evidence to NAFDAC and they were able to change their mind. And so those were just some of the key aspects I took. And maybe finally will be on the volatility of basing your economy on oil. And that is even more reason why non-oil export is not just, as we said in the beginning, cannot just be a side hustle. We have to think of how to make it into our main hustle, because is especially now that the entire world seems to be wanting to move away. Just this year we had news about the arms being open towards nuclear energy. Like, people want to shift away. So as a country, we have to wake up and open our eyes and say, okay, how can we change our oil main hustle into more diversification? So yeah, those were just some of my big topics and big takeaways that I took from today's episode with Titi.
Thank you, Favor. Yeah, they're very good insights and ones I would agree with. Yasmin, how about you?
Okay, so yeah, that was very insightful from Favor. I love the fact that she touched on the importance of the Nigerian market, knowing to when exporting other items rather than just oil. So I think I would drift towards the gender aspect of this. Um, I think Titi being on the forefront of import-export community in Nigeria does give women and other marginalized group hope to think, oh, I can do this as well. But I think Titi is the exception in that industry that really makes room for women like her. But yet she managed to not just survive and thrive. And her story isn't just about resilience; it's also about challenging the status quo and redefining what leadership looks like, what success looks like, and just to quiet down the persistent power of showing up as yourself, even if the world tells you not to. So I think Mr. Richard can touch a bit more on the gender side and what he thinks as well.
Yeah, Yasmin, that's a really thoughtful comment. I think that, yeah, I think, look, you sort of recognized it in what you said. I think Titi Ojo is a force of nature. She is absolutely amazing, very impactful, not shy, able to really, not scared of using her voice in effective ways and bringing forward other people as well. And when myself and the policy development facility team went out to hire someone to do this work, when we interviewed Titi Ojo, she blew our socks off, as the expression goes. She was just so, we could tell with Titi Ojo that she was the type of person that could turn this concept into a reality because of the charisma she has, because of the skills she has, because of all the rest of it. And so the fact that she experiences things with such confidence and bravado and all the rest of it is the very ingredients that made her the right person for doing this. That said, recognizing that the challenges that women face in Nigeria, not everyone should be expected to be a Titi Ojo in order to have success or to be able to navigate the environment, because not every man is like Titi Ojo, right, in terms of how they're able to do things, and yet they're still able to find success. They're still able to. So we have to set up systems, we have to set up platforms for voice to come through that can accommodate people with different skills and different strengths. And I think that's one of the things which is so nice about the platform, is that it does give a channel for different voices to come through and in different ways, because that's so important. Because not everyone is the public speaker. Not everyone is some people would rather write things down. Some people would rather have a private conversation with someone. And we need, as policymakers, we need to have the flexibility to allow input to come through in different ways, because that's ultimately the way we develop inclusive policies that work for everyone. And of course, the whole point of the non-oil export group is about inclusion of voice, whether it's from sectors or whether it's about individuals, SMEs, and all the rest of it. So, and the gender aspect is definitely part of that. So yes, I think perhaps Titi Ojo sees things from the way that she's lived her life, which is in an exceptional way. But I think having those different forms of where people can make their feedback through as well in different areas is absolutely important. So thank you, Yasmin, for that. One other point, while I've got the floor, which I'd like to make is, if I go back to the overarching business case behind why to do this. It's what I would refer to as I wouldn't start from here type problem. Now, when I say I wouldn't start from here, there's an old joke which I used to know as a kid, and it wasn't a very funny joke, but there was a lot of truth in the joke. It was a story about, I think it originated in Canada, and there was this individual that was lost in a city, and he goes across to the local policeman to ask for directions, and the policeman looks at the place the person's trying to go, and he has a big intake of breath and sort of goes, "Oh, I wouldn't start from here." And that was the extent of the useful advice he gave. And I think a lot of the time when we're facing challenges, I should say that happened to me in real life. I was in London, and an East Asian couple came up to me in the street, and they had their booking for their hotel, and they were asking for directions on for the tube line, like how to get to that place. And the place they booked into was Stratford upon Avon, which is not in London. It's in the Midlands of the United Kingdom. So it's not something like most people would think, where it's like, oh, we'll look on the tube map and find the nearest tube station and you'll be fine. It's like you've got to go to a different city. You probably got to change trains. You probably got to go. Your train probably wouldn't even take you all the way you needed to go to the place. So giving that kind of direction for that kind of problem is pretty complicated. So I remember when I looked at their booking and saw it was Stratford upon Avon and not Stratford, which actually is in London, it was Stratford upon Avon. I just felt I sighed, like I visibly sighed in front of them, because how do I even start to explain to these people how to get to Stratford upon Avon? But then, with a bit of thought, you can say, well, maybe I can't direct them all the way to Stratford upon Avon, but I could probably direct them to the right train terminal that's going to take them to the Midlands and get them at least a bit closer to the direction. And I think a lot of complex problems we face in development are these I wouldn't start from here type problems. And this is exactly it with trade in Nigeria, right? Because let's suppose, and I know this is not undisputed, that let's suppose that having a more open economy is a pathway to transformation and development in Nigeria. Now, that's a controversial statement. Not everyone agrees with it, but let's suppose it is. If having a more open economy is a recipe for economic transformation in the country, what do we need to do to get there? Because it's not it's not a simple problem, because it's not like one day Nigeria will wake up and suddenly it will have removed all tariffs, or it would have made its ports streamlined and all the rest of it. There's a lot of things that have got to happen along the way to get there. Now, suppose we say, right, let's not try and define the whole map here. We know broadly where we're trying to get to, but we only need to look at what the next step along the way is. What's the terminal that's going to take us to the Midlands, say, to do this? And I think for Nigeria, that was very much having a voice for non-oil exporters. Because if you think that trade policy is currently put together without thinking about those SME non-oil exporters, then having a platform which enables those non-oil exporters to speak and to feed into policy and be reflected and represented in policy, that's the step that's needed in order to have a more inclusive trade policy, and one that doesn't just work for the oil companies, doesn't just work for the Dangotes of the world, but works for everyone, whether it's a small SME selling chocolates or cocoa or cashew nuts or whatever, that there's a platform for them to have that voice. So this is what I call I wouldn't start from here type problem. And I think what Titi Ojo was able to do a brilliant job in is take us to that next step. So we've got to the next step. We haven't completed everything. We haven't got to a trade policy which is really driving competitiveness, productivity, jobs, growth, and all the rest of it. But we're a step closer than we were at the beginning. And there's a lasting legacy from the work that DFID, who were doing this at the time, has been able to do. So I don't know. I'll go back to you, Favor. Any thoughts on that? Does that make sense as a way of looking at things?
Yes, it does. And just back to your story about the couple that met you, I actually read that in your article, so it was funny here. Not funny for the couple, and I hope that they found their way to their destination. But yes, it's really it's and I think the negative part of it is when you see how far you have to go, or in their case, the fact that they're in a totally different place. There's a tendency to feel discouraged, like where do I want to begin? So the negative part will be like, maybe I don't begin. Nah, I'll just leave them, let them go and find somebody else. I'll give them direction. And that might be the tendency for us as a country, like, oh, it's just too far off. Let's stick to what we know. If we try to pivot, it's going to be too difficult. But people like Titi have showed us that there's a possibility. There's no even way a country like Nigeria can turn their economy around in one day, and nobody's asking them to do it in 5 years or in 10 years. But those little things, those little shifts, those movements, as we will call them here in flywheel economics, will one day lead to that flywheel effect. But it has to start small, and that smallness has to start now.
Yasmin, any final thoughts from you?
Yes, definitely. So we can see that Titi Ojo has been able to create a pathway for import and export of other items or products rather than just oil. So she's been the one to create the momentum for the flywheel. And I think average Nigerians, like Favor mentioned, would not even imagine that being a possibility. So, going back to your story about the East Asian couple, sometimes things rather seem like they are not possible, or they seem so far or so hard to go on or to fix. And then sometimes it's just what you need is just that one person or just that one momentum or one item to keep everything going. So I think, yeah, Titi is just the face front of something that is going to be very great if and when government supports and gives more hands out to SMEs and other exporters of other products. So yeah, those are my final thoughts.
Thank you, Yasmin. Yeah, and as you're saying that, it reminds me of that old proverb of, how do you eat an elephant? And it's one bite at a time, right? Although nobody should be eating elephants, but if you are eating an elephant, it's one bite at a time. But yeah, I think that this has been such an important episode for me because it was an area of the work that we did under the policy development facility in Nigeria, which has had such a lasting impact. It was such a good example of good international development, and it's nice to be able to shine the spotlight on these kind of successes, and all the more important to do so, Favor, particularly now that the international development budgets around the world are under threat, because there aren't enough stories that come out there about where this makes a lasting difference. And it's not that these things don't exist, but often it's not that there's not enough invested in telling the long-term impact stories of some of these things. And I think Yasmin and I have been looking at another one today as well from the Mafita project, which we'll do in a future episode too. So let me hand over to Favor now to wrap up the episode.
I would say that metaphorically, we are eating elephants over here at Flyway Economics because we're taking those hard topics and taking it one bite at a time. Thank you very much, Titi, for coming on our show and just holding no barrels and just sharing with us all the incredible work. She talked about the fact that people are still asking, how did this program end? But technically, it's not ended. The legacy still continues in the face of non-oil exporters and the association that is going on. And thank you to my dear co-host Yasmin. It's been amazing having you. Thank you, Richard, for another insightful discussion. And to our dear listeners, I could never forget you. Thank you very much for always coming and listening. And we hope that this has been another insightful episode. So don't forget that you can continue to keep up with the fascinating topics that we cover here at Flywheel simply by going to our website, flywheeleconomics.com. And we would love to hear back from you. We love your thoughts. If you have any other case studies that are similar, whether in other countries or in other sectors, you can reach us at our social media, on our social media pages. We are on X, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Our handle across board is Flywheel Economics. Until next time, this has been the Flywheel Economics Podcast.